Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second in our climate conversation series. Today, I'll be talking with Prakash Arunkundrum, the Head of Global Operations and Sustainability at Logitech. My name is Tom Popple, and I'm a Senior Manager for Climate Change and Sustainability at Natural Capital Partners. We've had a great sign-up rate for this event, particularly among large international businesses. We'd love to hear about what Logitech is doing in sustainability and climate action. Just to run through a few logistics, this webinar is scheduled to last 30 minutes, and we'll leave the final 5 or 10 minutes at the end for audience questions. You are all muted in listen-only mode, so please use the panel on the right-hand side of the screen to submit any questions, and we'll go through them at the end. Just to kick things off, we'd like to take a quick audience poll. So, to what extent is your organization encouraging others to take climate action? So please select any and all that apply to you. So we have other organizations in our industry sector, so your peers, organizations in our value chain, so thinking about your suppliers, your staff, your employees, or your customers, your clients, or actually you're looking only internally right now, you're focusing only on your own footprint first. So please select all of those that apply to you, and then we'll give you a little moment to fill that in, and then we'll take a look at the results there. Great stuff. So a real mixed bag, and great to see that internal and staff employee engagement comes out on top as the most common theme that people are picking up there. And also, 2/3 of you there are actually focusing beyond your own footprint. So looking at your peers, or 2/3 into your value chain, and then just over 1/3, 40% to your customer base. Very good. And we'll be hearing lots of links to that in our conversation with Prakash as well. So now I'd like to kick off with a quick overview of Logitech's climate action. So Logitech actually made all of its gaming products carbon neutral certified, where they measured, reduced, and then offset residual emissions, and is committed to providing detailed carbon impact labeling for all of its products. Prakash is Logitech's Head of Global Operations, responsible for everything from sourcing, manufacturing, and supply chain to sustainability. And then prior to joining Logitech, Prakash was a principal at both A.T. Kearney, PwC, and has held several management positions at i2 Technologies, a supply chain management company acquired by JDA Software. So let's get into the core of this conversation. Hi, Prakash. How are you doing?
Hi, Tom. Great. It's great to be here.
Great. Perfect. So look, let's start off at the very beginning and a little bit more about the business. So can you start by telling us what a cloud peripherals company does and why you've decided to focus on sustainability of your products?
Yeah, so as you know, Logitech as a brand, a lot of people know us, but maybe I'll start with what's our purpose. Our purpose is to create and design experiences so folks like around the world can actually enjoy life more, right? That's our purpose. And if you actually think of what we do, we came from a legacy of making PC peripherals, which are things like mice and keyboards that attach to a PC. And over the years, we've actually started doing other things in gaming, things that I'm using now with this camera and this headset, which is actually attaching to a video device, and many others where people are creating and consuming content online. We provide the tools to make that happen. And if you really think about all of those things have shifted from the PC to the cloud. And really, we think of ourselves as a cloud peripherals company for that reason. And we live in sort of unusual times. We're doing this call. We probably do this live, face-to-face, Tom, if it was a different time. And fortunately, I hope the people who are on this call, I'm really thankful for the doctors and teachers who actually made this possible for us to be here, to be able to enjoy this moment with the COVID crisis going on. And so really Logitech, I think, just to come back to your question on cloud peripherals, we do 4 things, right? We enable people from creativity and productivity perspective with tools like the mice and keyboards and headsets and others. From there, allowing people to play games and really helping from a gaming perspective. And from there, also helping with video interactions like the one we are just having, and allowing people to actually stream and create content and consume music. So those are kind of our verticals. that we operate in, and coming in through the COVID crisis, all of those obviously have somewhat accelerated, as you probably have seen. We're doing more video. I'm sure you are. I'm doing more video than I ever did before, and that's starting to happen. So that's cloud-peripherals as Logitech. And what have we been focused on? We've been focused on sustainability for many years. And as a company that actually truly cares about the impact of our experiences on people, this is something that's very core to our mission and purpose.
Yeah, very good. And I must admit, honestly, my home office is packed full of Logitech products, and my solar keyboard, being a true nerd, is one of my favorite items that I have.
That's
So
a great product. It just
yeah,
uses this magical power without any battery. So that's pretty
yeah,
cool. Yeah.
yeah. Who would have thought the sun might power stuff? That's a new technology we need to we need to get hold of. So so talk to us a little bit about the role itself and your journey. So it may be a little bit news, but why would the head of operations also lead sustainability?
Yeah, so that's a real head scratcher for a lot of people. And I'll just tell you, I came into this role, as you pointed out from my background, I was in management consulting prior to this. I came into this role looking at the margin of our products and actually making sure that we make good impact from a revenue and a growth perspective, of course. And that's all the things that you think of when you think of operations. But one of the things that an operations team does is amongst one of the things is actually impact in the factory. So I've walked, I don't know how many factories, a lot of factories all over the world. And Tom, every time I walk through one of these factories, it kind of hits you that the kind of scale at which you do things hits you, and the ability for us to actually have impact there is super real, because you make a physical thing, you make lots of them, and if you could make them better, you could actually impact sustainability in a big way. So that's a big part of my personal drive, if you will. And more importantly, I think for us at Logitech, we've actually talked about this idea of pervasive sustainability. So what that is really that we want to have everyone as part of our operations, be it people doing sourcing, people in manufacturing, people designing our products, folks looking at how we market our products, all of them have a role to play in how we as a community and as a society actually impact sustainability, and especially at a company like Logitech, that's woven into the fabric of operations. So that's really been the reason why I was tapped by my CEO and the board to actually look at sustainability and make it a part of our integral part of who we are as a company. I'll also say, one of the things that is probably not obvious to a lot of people is sustainability actually helps costs, because you do less in general. When you start with sustainability, the first thing you do is reduce. And what do you do when you reduce? You imagine you had a big box of something that was shipping. Now you just made it a smaller box. Right off the bat, it's better for the environment. It's actually cheaper to make a smaller box than a bigger box, and it's actually more efficient to ship it. It actually is less carbon to ship it. Smaller boxes are less carbon than bigger boxes. So it's actually also helped us in a lot of different ways to re-examine how we operate and how to really make it possible from a implementation perspective. So that's one of the reasons why an operations guy like me is heading up sustainability. I care about it deeply, and I think our management team does. And we have a real way to impact it through our operations, right? And I think that's actually really been exciting to see.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. You see it, you feel it, you touch it, you understand it. It's interesting. We're definitely 20 plus years on from where Interface started their journey, and they treated carbon and waste as this issue to overcome. And many programs like theirs and others become cost neutral over time, just like you say, actually, because you can then put that cost saving back into then further efficiency and action and leadership. But obviously what Logitech have done, I mean, you've gone beyond just the efficiency, the innovation, which is integral, and you have the sustainability by design as part of what you're doing. And you've been bold, and you've set science-based targets, and you've come out with a huge strategy, and you've got carbon neutral certified products. So talk to us a little bit about that sustainability by design and that ambition that you've set yourselves?
Yeah, so we've been a company, I'd say, who've been doing a lot of things on sustainability very quietly, like super quietly for many years. And now you're starting to hear a lot about it, right? We've been publishing our sustainability report for a long time. We've been doing a lot of things on hazardous substance and PVC-free cables and things of that sort that we've just been quietly at it. And there's a saying within Logitech, which is we just do the right thing, right? And we've been doing that. We've been doing the right thing in terms of sustainability. But we really saw the opportunity as part of Alistair, who actually heads up our design team, to really rethink how we make products, right? And to do that from the get-go. So as an example, we had a gaming mice, which is now the G Pro wireless gaming mice, which is used by pro gamers. And if you were to think of pro gamers as probably the most picky, users, not probably, I'm guessing not like you and me, Tom, because they are the most picky users. And we made the G Pro wireless mice better performance, better sensors, better everything from a performance standpoint. But along with that, when we designed it to have lower carbon. And how did we do that? We made it with thinner walls, so it's lighter. We redesigned the sensor in the product itself to actually have lower power consumption. We actually looked at like the mechanical structure to actually optimize for the number of parts and reduce the total size of parts. We redesigned packaging. So a number of different things that we did to actually reduce carbon, and we brought the carbon down by 20%, cycle over cycle. So that's a big part of how we've been thinking about it. And of course, that stands on a big foundation, and the foundation of life cycle carbon analysis, without which you can't quantify, like you said, without science-based targets, you kind of are sort of feeling it, but you want to be able to actually tell what's the real number. And that's kind of where we started this journey, and that's sort of how we have gotten to this place. And so that, for us, this is so integral, and that's why we think of the sustainability efforts as a design for sustainability efforts, which is really rethinking how you source materials, you manufacture, where do you need the right type of products, where do you need the right type of components. So that's really been a big focus for us over the number of years. And you've just started now hearing us talk about it more openly. And I think, we certainly think a lot of others can, help learn from it.
Yeah, for sure. And you spoke about the pickiness of the gaming community, which I'm not right now in my current age, but used to love it when I was certainly younger and spent those days on there. Command and Conquer, if anyone knows what that is. But you chose to take that gaming portfolio carbon neutral first. You certified that carbon neutral. Why did you go for gaming? What was the reason for going?
Well, the first thing is gamers. Just like you said yourself, you still fondly remember it. I could see the twinkle in your eye there. Gamers are passionate folks, and we wanted to really actually make sure that like we started with the portfolio. I mean, as you know, Logitech has a lot of different portfolios, and we wanted to start with something where the consumer is very engaged. They understand what we're doing, and we also wanted to listen to their feedback as part of what we did. So that's one. And two, it's a really big and fast growing business for us. And that's the second big reason. And I think, it builds on the foundation of who we are as a company, as Logitech. We came from, us as a mice company, but of course we do a lot of other things. We do keyboards and headsets and video and other things, but gaming came from that, right? From that place of birth, if you will. And that's really the reason we started with gaming. We intend to do this across everything. I mean, that's my ambition, is to go across the board, do this across all products, not just carbon neutral, but also really designed for sustainability. So we have impacts that we can actually reduce on the footprint we leave behind.
Yeah, and you mentioned there in the gaming products themselves and that particular mice, redesigning it, reducing the components, the materials, the weight. So something which you've announced is that you're going to have carbon information, carbon labeling on products, which I guess reflects one impact, but one that people understand. So what's the value in providing that carbon information on the products themselves?
Yeah, so I'll make this sort of real for you, because this came about because my CEO and I, Bracken and I, were sitting and we were talking about, wouldn't it be nice when you go out to shop when you buy a bag of chips and you flip it around and you look at it and say, oh, wow, I just bought 120 calories. And here's the composition of it, you kind of have a feeling for what that is. Wouldn't it be nice if for those of us who are actually sustainability, nerds, if I can call it that, and for ones that want to actually make the world a better place, wouldn't it be nice if you actually inform consumers, hey, here's the amount of carbon you're consuming from this product. So that's really where this started, right? The carbon as a new calorie, if you want to think of it like that. And why did we start there? Because we felt that the consumers needed to know what amount of carbon are there in the products and be really transparent about the carbon that we generate in our products, and hopefully actually drive that actually internally as well as a metric to improve the amount of carbon generation over generation. So if we made the product today, we're going to tell you what the carbon is. And by definition, I'm forcing myself and the rest of my colleagues to actually make an impact, right? Like a real impact that you can actually measure in a quantified way. So that's really where it came from, the idea of carbon transparency. So we created, we put our design folks on it, and they came up with a really cool logo. You should check it out. It's just a letter C with an arrow down showing our intent to reduce the carbon over time. And we'll talk about it as part of our packaging. So it's not something that's going to be hidden away somewhere on our website. It's going to be in every package that we can actually have as quickly as we can roll out. And so that's the goal. Yeah, it's a super exciting effort, and it's something that we've developed. And like I said, every one of these things stand on the foundation of this life cycle analysis capability that we've built here at Logitech over many years, without which you can't actually quantify the amount of carbon. And so that's kind of how we started this journey.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting. I think, beyond that gaming community, when you move to other products, thinking in the B2B world, if companies have set science-based targets or just any kind of green procurement program, they're going to be looking at products and services and solutions that have a lower carbon footprint, and they're going to want to understand that data, understand the footprint of products. So it goes a long way in that market as well. I can see that. Just to jump back to something related to carbon neutrality, so offsetting. So offsetting plays a role within your program, your portfolio of actions, alongside the engineering, the efficiency, and the reductions. But you've still chosen to take that step further. And actually, in your offsetting portfolio, you've supported some pretty high impact forest conservation, preservation activities in Canada, Brazil, and Indonesia. So talk to us about why you chose those particular projects.
Yeah, I think maybe I'll start with what are we actually trying to accomplish, right? We had a pledge last year to follow the Paris Accord using the science-based targets, and really that comes from a place where we committed to a 1.5 degree centigrade world. So most of that amount of carbon reduction that we're going to commit to comes from designing for sustainability. And we've got a number of programs in place, and those are coming online as we spoke about earlier. But really, until that happens, the world is actually warming as we speak, and every day we make products. So the carbon offsetting project really came from that place where we must do what we are doing for designing for better sustainability, but also offset what we can right now, so that can get sequestered from a carbon standpoint from the atmosphere. So that's really where it came from. And, it's one of those things that was informed by the fact that we think the clock's ticking, and, the world really needs a lot more of this. So that's where it came from. Why did we pick? I'll just take Indonesia as an example. The Indonesian rainforest Indonesia is one of the largest sources of paper pulp, which goes into packaging, which ends up in our product. So when you go out to buy a consumer electronics product, which has packaging, when you open the packs, it's typically trees coming from Indonesia. And our investments there is a way to actually help, A, keep the forests in place, B, protect the local community through sort of the REDD+ programs, and actually make sure that it is supported in a climate impact way that is consistent with our values. So that's really, how we think about it, designing for sustainability so we can reduce the carbon and a bridge to get there through offsets while we do that, right? And that's really our focus.
Yeah, yeah, and you certainly joined an elite, but definitely growing group of companies who see that connection of closing the gap. You do need to do everything possible, but today you also need to get to zero. And I
Yeah,
think the Indonesian one is a great example of linking back the climate financing to your product and your supply chain, and you do the same by supporting projects in China as well, which is where you
yeah,
have operations and manufacturing. So there's lots of links that can be made into the business as well. So we've spoken about a lot. You've spoken about being fairly silent, but doing lots behind the scenes and growing. So what drives you and Logitech to keep evolving and then developing your your sustainability and climate program?
yeah. I think at the core of it, I could tell you it's part of the employees at Logitech and definitely the management team at Logitech. At the core, we believe that global warming is something that we must address. Right. That's the core. I'm probably talking to you, so you're like, yeah, that's obvious, but it's somewhat obvious, but it's to the point that we want to dedicate our focus and efforts on this. So we have some core values in the company, and the environmental impact that we create is one of the biggest values that we have been focused on. It's in our priority list as the number X, in the top 10 for sure. Sustainability priority is like really up there, which is why you've heard us talk about it. You've heard my CEO talk about it, Bracken, and that's where it comes from. There's definitely we also see another thing, which is somewhat obvious as well, which is that in the future, unsustainable brands are going to die. Right? You as a consumer, when you go out to buy, you are looking for more sustainable brands. And we also think this is something that companies have to do, and it's definitely a call to action for a lot of us to do this from a personal perspective, but also from a business perspective. We want to make our brand sustainable because that's really what our consumer research has shown, that those are things that resonate well, right? When it's definitely something that we see the industry shifting towards. There's more awareness on this topic, and you could start seeing, as you pointed out earlier, you could start seeing a lot of companies now starting to think about it in this way, in part because consumers are more aware of where
Yeah.
sustainability is and how important it is in their purchasing choice.
Yeah. I mean, kind of feel a little bit like you're in an advantageous position because of Rackham being quite supportive of what you do and having engineers that are so passionate. Not every company is in that position, and sometimes sustainability leaders can be fighting a little bit internally to move this agenda forward, or at least do it in a meaningful way. So, what even within a progressive company like Logitech, there must have been some challenges that were faced.
Yeah, I
Maybe
think,
pick one or two and talk to
yeah,
us about it.
for sure. I mean, there's always challenges on time and resources on anything, right? I think that's those two things probably define most of the challenges most companies have. So I'm sure if you went out, even in a in any company setting, you went out and you looked at sustainability programs and perhaps where they kind of stall a little, is it when it gets to time and resources. So that's kind of why we have actually chosen to make this part of our operations and pervasive enough that it is part of everyone's job. So that's really been a big learning for me, if you will, in actually making sure that this is not something done in an ivory tower somewhere that somebody says, here's what you need to do, but something that's woven into the products you make, into your operations, into the kind of marketing you do, all of that type of stuff. So we've had challenges. I would say perhaps nothing that was not difficult to overcome. The biggest challenges, I think, remain technological challenges. How do you make electronics more sustainable? And how do you find enough industry uh, industry folks that can actually come together to solve this problem? Because we're still a small company, and we really need to join forces with some really key strategic folks that are thinking like this to actually really come up with sustainable materials, new ways of making these products. I think that's really where the challenge has been. How do we unlock this quickly enough that we can get on this glide path to reducing the impact of carbon on our products?
Yeah, and that links to a few questions we've had in, so maybe merging them a little bit and putting them to you. So, one question then, how are you collaborating with your supply chain partners in order to provide you with materials with lower environmental impacts?
So the great thing about supply chain partners is they're part of my remit, which is part of operations. So my sourcing
Lucky
team
you.
is actually the ones talking to them. So we've made this a part of their quarterly business review process. So we've actually talked to our suppliers and said, this is really important to us. We've been doing that over the number of years on labor rights, human rights, working conditions, environment, all that sort of stuff. We've been doing that, of course, for a number of years. But we've actually, in the last couple of years, we've added this particular prism of looking at, climate action and how you, as a provider of a, let's say, a chipset or a manufacturer or someone doing packaging, how are you impacting it? And really starting that conversation not in a punishing way, but in an enabling way, to sort of share with them our numbers that we've collected on, hey, here's the carbon impact that you're causing. What can you do about it? Here's potential levers that you could pull to reduce the carbon. So we've really had that as part of our QBRs and the focus on a strategic level. Every year I have a meeting with all my suppliers that we talk to, of course, and partners. We talk to them and say, hey, this is an important thing. And we made it a priority, Tom. I think that's the simple answer. I think if you make it a priority, a lot of things actually fall in place, right? I think it starts there. If you make it a priority, you can actually impact quite a few things that you thought was not possible, because let's face it, we don't have all the answers. Our partners actually they run their business. They know better how to run their business. So sometimes we're not going to them prescribing, here's what I want from you, but we're going to them prescribing, here's the impact you're having. We would like you to improve that impact. We don't know exactly how, but here's a few ideas, and let's brainstorm on how we can help you.
Yeah, and that's great. And there was another question kind of came up, and just kind of rephrasing it, but it's kind of playing back to your capabilities and your knowledge you have internally. How willing are you to share that with your partners and then maybe the industry too, considering that you're pioneering?
Yeah, for sure. The carbon label that we started off talking about, we've certainly developed the carbon logo. If anyone wants to use it, we will happily lend it to them. If they want to understand how we do life cycle carbon analysis, again, we're happy to engage. As a matter of fact, I've engaged with a few others, not in our industry segment, but we've come out openly and said, if competitors want to know how to do this, I'm happy to entertain those conversations, because this is not about Logitech trying to win something. This is not about that. This is coming from a place where we genuinely think we want to have an impact on the total amount of carbon that companies like us produce, and to be able to reduce that. And I think we can do this together better.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Prakash. We're actually going to move now to open up a second poll, because I think that links nicely to lots of the conversation we've been having, actually. And I know we're both really interested to see what comes out of this one. So how often do you think about sustainability when buying electronic products? So this is for yourselves as individuals. So so please answer here. Select just one. So every time I buy an electronic product, I think about sustainability. Often, sometimes, rarely, or never. So if the audience could please respond to that for us. Here we go. So here's the answers, Prakash, that we were curious on. So 15% of the audience actually consider it every time they buy a product, which is great. So maybe there's some nerds out there who love the solar-powered keyboard, just as I do. So 2/3 then often or sometimes consider it. So it's on their mind whilst they're looking. And maybe part of this also is lack of choice, or this is the point about the carbon pricing, right? Which is it's education. It's showing what it is. Even if other products don't have it, it prompts you to think about it at least. And then maybe a little bit skewed slightly because of the audience on the call, but 20% rarely or never. But maybe that's also an indication that electronic products themselves haven't really been on the radar, maybe for some people. What do you think of those results, Prakash?
Well, that's great. Firstly, that 30, 15%, think about it often or every time. That's really good. So 45%. So we just need to work on the remaining 55% to convert them. So that's the work that
Yeah.
we've got cut out. It's really encouraging, I think, to know that quite a few people are thinking like this. And like I said, I think this is becoming a topic. And I'm for sure, if we did this poll, this is my prediction, Tom, and we can check back in 5 years. If we did this poll again in 5 years, I hope that answer is often, all the time, and maybe 80% of the time. I still think there'll be some folks that might look at value more than other things. But yeah,
for sure. I'll put that in the diary, 5 years time. Prakash, thanks very much for your time here. So our conversation is come to an end. I'd like to thank you and all our listeners for joining and attending and participating with the questions. If you have any further questions, anybody at all, please reach out via email to us here. My email address is here. And again, if you have any emails for Prakash, then put them through and we'll put them to him. The recording of this webinar will be available on our website and it'll be sent out to everybody that registered very shortly. So please feel free to share it with your colleagues. And then do look out for the next conversation in this series as we speak to our colleagues and friends at Oliver Wyman, and then in the future, GE Renewable Energy as well. And all that is available on our website. So thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, Prakash, and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.